Hello, my name is Abby Miner. Welcome to the 5th episode of The Poetry Path. This is an ongoing series of videos introducing you to many different forms and styles of poetry. For the past few weeks, we've focused on making comparisons in poetry, using vivid language and sensory details, and creating metaphors. Today, we're going to turn our attention to one of the forms that a poem can take. Not just what words you choose, but how the words are arranged on the page. Before we dive in, I want to start with a little bit of brainstorming to warm up our minds. I'd like you to find a piece of paper and something to write with, and I'd like you to think of someone whose kitchen has been important or memorable to you. What's a kitchen you've spent a lot of time in? In the middle of your page, write down so-and-so's kitchen. So if for me, I decide to think about my grandmother's kitchen and that's a kitchen that stands out in my memory, I'd write down in the middle of my page, Grandma's kitchen. Now, once you've written that down, I'd like you to close your eyes. And I'd like you to imagine that kitchen. Actually imagine that you are walking into it. What do you notice first? What's going on? Is it busy and warm and loud, or quiet? Is there a window? Take a look out the window if there is and see what's there. What do you see in this kitchen? What do you hear? What do you taste? What do you smell? And who else is there? When you reach out your hand, what can you touch? And what does it feel like? Once you've spent as much time as you would like imagining you're in that kitchen, I'd like you to come back to your blank page with those two words in the middle. So again, mine says Grandma's kitchen. And I'd like you to write down as many sensory details as you can recall. What can you see, smell, taste, hear, and touch in that kitchen? For example, if I were remembering my grandmother's kitchen, I'd write down the sight of her blue plastic silverware, the smell of meatballs cooking, and the hot linoleum underfoot. Pause the screen here while you think and write. So now you have all these sensory details written down. And I'd like to invite you now to create some comparisons like we did in episode 2. So if I noted the feel of hot linoleum underfoot in my grandmother's kitchen, maybe I'd say, linoleum hot underfoot like warm stones. Or maybe I'd make a different comparison. Maybe I'd say, linoleum underfoot hot as pavement. Remember that comparisons are created with the linking words like or as. Pause the screen here while you make some comparisons. So now you've gathered and created all these sensory details and comparisons that describe and recall a kitchen that's been important to you. I'd like you to now set all these aside for a moment, and I'd like to read for you a poem called Acrostic by Ruth Stone. Acrostic by Ruth Stone. Whatever good befalls us now, after this pact, or whatever evil, loosens the bloom upon the bough. This way is marked forever double, ever shared in fine or coarse, reckoned in pleasure or remorse. So shall it be, the flesh is wed, the spirit enters the marriage bed. One chain or silken tie or kiss nails the lovers upon their bliss. Each is the food, the other is fed. Part the flesh, it shall not be severed. Here is a joint defying time. Drawn is the pact where the hearts endeavored. Now, I'd like to draw your attention to the first letters of each line of this poem. See, down the page here on the left, what do those letters spell out? They spell out Walter Stone, Ph.D. That's the name of Ruth Stone's husband, who died when they were quite young. By embedding his name in this poem, rather secretly along that left-hand margin, Ruth Stone creates a tribute to her late husband. And this form of poetry, where the letters of the first lines can be read down the page to spell something out, is called an acrostic. Acrostic poetry is a very old form of poetry. You can find it in older religious texts, as it's not only a way of embedding a secret or a surprise, but a way of remembering information. Sometimes the first letters of each line in an acrostic poem spell out the alphabet. I'd like to invite you now to create your own acrostic poem. Write so-and-so's kitchen down the left side of your page, a new page, and use those letters as the beginning of each line. Start by seeing if any of your sensory details or comparisons begin with one of these letters, and then write them in. As you go, don't worry about rhyming unless you want to. There will be plenty of interesting challenges in figuring out how to write your sentences across lines. Let me show you an example. So I've written Grandma's kitchen down the left side of my page, and I'm going to grab that phrase, linoleum underfoot, hot as pavement, and plug it in like this. The H in kitchen becomes hot as pavement. And so I have to write linoleum underfoot up on this line, and then see how to begin that one. So I know that linoleum underfoot, hot as pavement, will carry over. But how will I begin this line, which begins with a C? Maybe, since I'm thinking of my grandma's kitchen, I'll say, constant Yiddish curses fly above linoleum underfoot, hot as pavement. So see, you have to do some creative thinking here to figure out how to work with these letters that limit you in a certain way, but also will maybe give you some surprises in other ways. Pause the screen here and work on your own acrostic poem for as long as you'd like. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed working on your acrostic kitchen poem. And I'd like to close class today with an acrostic poem my students wrote called 17 Down. 17 Down by Steve, Edna, Kitty, Dolly, Janet, Vicky, and Marie. Written at the Bellefonte Senior Center in the spring of 2016. An embryonic dogwood bud pops out like a soda can top cracking, playing jacks on the concrete by the water pump and pulling weeds, washing windows, raking pine cones and sticks. Lilacs coloring the air like cologne. It's Appalachian Spring. People in brilliant vests collecting litter from the side of the road. Had to be in when the streetlight zapped on is what Mother always said. Appalachian Spring. Oh, the dreadful wind and rain, noisy blue jays bullying, blaring like a car alarm. Silent new grass, pretty finches change from brown to yellow, red sunset cardinals that never shut up. You want to say, give it a rest. In the garden, digging up rusty keys, a railroad spike, pieces of glass. Neglected roadkill, what the crows don't eat. Not good for soup. Gotta get that fresh kill to do that. So take a look at the letters down the left hand of the page that begin every line. And if you read down, you can see that this spells Appalachian Spring. So now you have even more information about what these poets were thinking about when they wrote this poem. And if you yourself have experienced an Appalachian Spring, I hope that it sounds familiar to you. Thanks for joining me today, and I hope you enjoyed learning about this new form of poetry called acrostic poetry. Again, when we're thinking about acrostic poetry, we're thinking about how we place the words on the page, whereas in past weeks we've been thinking about what words we choose and why. So now we're bringing together those thoughts about sensory details and comparisons, and we're thinking now about how we arrange those words we've chosen on the paper. So we're bringing together content and form. If you'd like to share any of the writing you've created during this lesson, please email it to Galaxy Arts and Education Coordinator Renee McGowan at rmcquown@ciu10.org. Thanks again for joining me today, and I'll see you next week.